Why is it that Indigenous peoples do so much worse than the rest of us? I'm talking particularly in the English-speaking countries, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Again and again, same story. Isn't it time then to be honest about this? I mean, don't give me the usual excuses. Oh, it's all because of white racism. It's colonisation. Look, there must be something else going on as well. And it is so critical now to be honest about this, because we seem to be repeating a terrible mistake with this new race politics. And we're seeing that particularly in Australia, where the Prime Minister, for some bizarre reason, thinks that what is being done in New Zealand, Canada, the US, is exactly what Australia must now do as well to fix what's wrong with its Aborigines, fix the poverty, the unemployment, the terrible health outcomes, the high suicide rates, high rates of crime and imprisonment, you know, the whole lot. And the answer to all this apparently is more racial segregation, including now a kind of Aboriginal-only advisory parliament called The Voice, followed by a treaty.
But Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been so clear. The form of constitutional recognition they are asking for is a voice, not our sympathy, not a symbol, but a vehicle for progress, a practical tool to make their children's lives better. Not just something that will feel good, something that will do good.
Now, if you're in America, if you're in Canada or New Zealand, you're probably looking at that thinking, what on earth are you doing taking inspiration from us? Why are you trying to repeat in Australia what's been a failure everywhere else? A treaty with Indigenous people, self-rule, where in countries like those, well, it's done no good at all that you can notice, not in terms of fixing health and wealth and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder why that penny hasn't dropped. And dropped also in America and elsewhere, that this kind of race politics is at a dead end. It's a disastrous failure. And it's for this reason. If you do want Western standards of health and wealth, you have to take on Western standards of how to get it. But around the world, this race politics, treating Indigenous peoples as a race apart, needing their own race-based self-government, has turned out to be a complete disaster. Not that here in Australia, the media has been bothering to check any of that when they burble how much better things are overseas.
New Zealand, Canada, Sweden, the US have all negotiated treaties with Indigenous peoples. Why is it such a drama to discuss one in Australia?
Well, it is a drama, actually, to divide a country by race, but worse, again, is to also push such a fake solution, because let us look at those shining examples of English-speaking countries which have made treaties with their Indigenous people. And let's ask, whatever else they might have done that's good or seems good or maybe isn't good, have they really made people healthier and wealthier relative to everyone else? Or is there something else still dragging them down? Let's start with New Zealand. It's had a treaty with the Maoris since 1840, and lately has been busily reinterpreting that treaty to give Maori equal say over water resources, equal say over health resources, co-partnerships. But where is the success here? The Maori are still more than 3 times more likely to be jailed, for instance. They are twice more likely to be unemployed. They are twice more likely to have children in poverty, and 3 times more likely to have children in care. And they also die on average about 7.3 years earlier. That doesn't sound like success. Well, let's look at Canada, which has signed more and more treaties with First Nations tribes since the first treaty in 1763. Yet here again, Indigenous children, 7 times more likely to need foster care. Adults, 7 times more likely to be in jail, and 50% more likely to be unemployed. What's more, and this is very important, the more self-government they get as the Indigenous people, the worse the results. First Nations people living on their own reserves earn half what Indigenous people off the reserves do. First Nations people in their own settlements tend to be poorer and unhealthier than those who've assimilated into cities and towns along with other Canadians. And you can see exactly the same with Australian Aborigines. The more assimilated, the more likely they are to live richer and longer lives. Or take the United States. Now there, American Indians are 40% more likely to kill themselves, 38% more likely to be jailed. Indian men tend to die 5 years younger than white men and are nearly twice more likely to be unemployed. But again, that important little fact here, all this is actually worse where American Indians live in more Indian ways, governing themselves. The Navajo Nation. It's the biggest of America's 326 Indian reservations, larger than Tasmania for Australian viewers. And its government there boasts that 82% of its people still practice the traditional Navajo lifestyle. Yet, despite that, and despite its oil, gas, uranium and casinos printing money, unemployment is more than 40%. 40%. And 40% of families there live below the poverty line. The Navajo are also twice more likely to kill themselves. So it's all worse where they live under their own government. So you can blame colonisation all you like, you can blame the white man, and that is again and again all you hear to explain the kind of figures I've been giving, right? It's the whites what done it. And it's this politics of victimhood that's also an excuse for not taking responsibility, not getting off your backside and fixing things yourself. Much easier if you blame someone else. But the missing element in that kind of narrative, the missing insight, is that culture counts. In this case, Indigenous culture also counts. Now, like I say, if you want Western wealth and health, you need Western ways. Tribal ways do not cut it. I don't know how often that has to be proved to the devastation of the next generation of children. For instance, a number of Indigenous tribes, particularly in Australia, they believe in communism. Now, I mean not, Karl Marx communism. I mean holding land collectively as a tribe, not as individuals. You can't chop it up and one person then develop it and make a fortune while the person next door sees, oh gosh, what you can do if you actually have some get up and go. Now this communism, it didn't work in the Soviet Union. I don't know why anyone would expect it to work any better with a tribe if you want to get rich. But there's also something worse about this race-based politics that's been devastating Indigenous peoples in the West. When you start having a system that gives rewards for people claiming to be Indigenous, insisting that they're owed, insisting on victimhood, demanding reparations and the rest, you might say they have a point, or they may not, but all that comes at a cost to them. Because when you set up a race-based system like that, the Indigenous leaders that rise through the ranks naturally tend to be ones who stress they are racially different, stress they are victims, otherwise why would they be getting all these handouts and all that? They are different. And those who have assimilated and don't rely on race-based perks to get ahead, and usually on the whole are doing better, they don't get a look in. Don't get a look in a system like that, even though they represent a healthier future and not this failed past. But, if the word assimilation horrifies you, makes you think cultural genocide, fine, stick with the tribal ways, but be honest. Tell me where in our Western world do those tribal ways actually leave people richer, healthier, and longer lived? Maybe the secret of Western culture really is that it works.